If you could really stop and zoom out to see how we behave as a society right now, it would not be difficult to notice how surface level most of our attention has become. We spend an enormous amount of time arguing, reacting, posting, correcting each other, picking sides, and feeling like we're engaged in something really meaningful. But when you zoom out, a lot of it is really not that deep. If you take a step back to notice what kind of debates dominate the public conversation right now, on one side, you have people believing that men can give birth. On the other side, you have people believing virgins can give birth. This is what we're arguing about. Which one is more rational? We're fighting around which one of these theories is more logical. We have religious people preaching logic to us. And it's not even the content of these claims, it's just this kind of intensity around them. People are so emotionally invested. People's reputations are built on these positions. Friendships break over them. Family relationships break over them. Entire identities, online identities, revolve around defending or attacking one of these sides. But what's the actual outcome of all this? Nothing really changes. Nothing changes in a material sense. No major system is affected. No real distribution of power happens. No structural issue gets resolved because these two groups of people are arguing harder about something that at the end of the day doesn't in any way change how decisions are made at the top or how resources are being distributed. And that is something that should not be ignored. We're not having conversations about things, we're being pulled into specific kinds of conversations. And these are very easy to react to, very easy to pick a side in, easy to get emotionally charged about. They're simplified, but they're also exaggerated. And they're, framed in such a way that makes it seem like they're very, very important, even when they're not connected to anything that actually shapes our lives in any meaningful ways. The things that are complex, things that are slow moving, things that are actually impacting us don't get the same level of attention because they require effort. They're more difficult to explain in a short post. They don't trigger immediate emotional reactions, so they don't spread so easily. So what ends up happening is that we collectively focus on what is, loud instead of what is important. And over time, this creates this weird situation where people feel very engaged, constantly discussing, debating, constantly reacting, but are not actually engaging with deeper layers of how the world works. And this creates an illusion of awareness. You feel like you're paying attention, like you're informed, you're a part of something that matters. People who consider themselves aware today are just people who are filling themselves with all kinds of information. That's not what awareness is. You go down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories on YouTube, and you feel like you're informed. You feel like you're a part of something that matters. But most of that energy is being spent in circles that don't lead anywhere. And it's really like we're being fed these small but very kind of highly stimulating pieces of conversation that are just enough to keep us occupied. And instead of questioning why those are the things we're constantly seeing and reacting to, we treat them as if they're the most important issues of our time. We argue over them, we divide ourselves over them, and we never stop to think whether they deserve that level of focus in the first place. At the same time, there are people and institutions making decisions that have long-term consequences, economic policies, corporate strategies, technological developments. These are not secret, but they operate in a space that doesn't attract the same kind of attention. They're not designed to go viral. And because of that, they move forward with, far less public scrutiny than the things we spend our days arguing about. So I don't want to say if people are shallow. That's like too simple. But we are very, very easily buying what we're being sold. We're constantly being nudged towards what is easy to consume, what is easy to react to. And over time, that shapes what we think matters. And then we think if something is visible, it means it's important. If something is everywhere, if everyone's talking about it, everyone is now talking about the drama between Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens. Quickly, pick a side. What does this mean to you? What does this mean for you? Nothing. If something is dominating your feed, if something is dominating the conversations online, we assume that that's important. But that's not true. It just means it's working. It's working at capturing our attention. And attention is one of the most valuable things there is. So when you see people going back and forth arguing about whether men can give birth or whether virgins can give birth, ask yourself, why is this what we focus on? Why are we focused on directing somebody else's life, telling somebody else what is right for them to do, what is right for them to choose? Why does this take up so much space in our collective awareness, while other more consequential topics barely break through? The real issue is that those arguments have become central in the first place. It's not about who is right or wrong. And that's a disconnection, because we're spending our energy, our time, and our emotional investment on things that don't move anything in a meaningful way, while the things that do move things significantly are being uninterrupted. We're not focusing on them. We're way too distracted by who is right, Ben or Candace. And the system doesn't need to force this. It doesn't need to silence people or control people in some very obvious way. It just needs to keep supplying this content that keeps us engaged on a surface level. As long as we're busy reacting, arguing, and picking sides in these kinds of debates, we're not directing that same level of attention elsewhere. And that's a very efficient setup. People feel involved, they feel expressive, they feel like they're participating, but they're not interfering with anything that challenges how the power operates, the real power. We are being pushed into individualism. This individualism is a new cult where everyone should assume their own unique identity. Everyone should focus on what they feel like being. This is not how you win. This is how you lose. When you're separated, when you're isolated, when you're operating through your emotion at all times, when you're offended by somebody calling you a man when you have a beard, when you're offended by somebody assuming you're a human and not a cat or a dog. This is ridiculous. This is so unimportant. And I can't wait for you all to get out of these ridiculous phases and feel ashamed of what you wasted a huge portion of your life on. It's about gathering. It's about everyone gathering together and not being isolated as individuals. Everywhere we look, individualism is favored. I'm coming from a human design cult where they convince us that we are this unique individual and we are here to be correct for ourselves. And it doesn't mean who we hurt in the process. It doesn't matter who we hurt in the process. It doesn't matter what relationships we break off in the process. The only thing that matters is that we are correct. And to be correct, it means you have to follow the strategy that we are giving you. You have to make all your decisions in one same way, in the way we tell you. This is a recipe for disaster. We are social species. We're not designed to be isolated. Isolation is a state through which we get the most programmed, the most influenced. We need the tribe. We need the group, because we cannot fight against this massive group of evil and power as individuals. We can only fight it as a group of light,